In episode 1 of this series, we learned about the extremely rare nature of the eclipses in 2017 and 2024, and we learned a little about the hidden roles, I believe, are being played by the United States and Trump and Obama as being reflections of Christ. We also caught a glimpse of how many of the things happening today seem to have germinated in the year 2017. Almost as if it was some critical juncture or nexus point in time. Some were only briefly mentioned, so we will now complete that discussion. If you remember, I stated that the Great Eclipse of 2017 took place in the 33rd week of the year, precisely 30 weeks and 3 days after Trump's inauguration. This was precisely 3 weeks prior to the tragic date of 9/11. Itself intimately linked to these eclipses, the latter of which was just hours shy of 3 complete weeks prior to the date for the Las Vegas shooting, as if 9/11 was some sort of midpoint or pivot point for these events. Well, I didn't mention that 333 days after Trump took office, on 19 December 2017, news outlets reported that government officials with the National Institutes of Health had lifted a ban on funding research into making pathogens more lethal, i.e., gain-of-function research. The decision specifically lifted a funding pause put in place 3 years earlier, yes, another 3, on experimenting with influenza, severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, and Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS, viruses. And yet another set of 3. When included with Moderna's patent for the COVID-19 spike protein sequence being approved in the 3rd month of 2017, 13 days prior to spring, this collective trinity of events was the official kickoff of COVID, an event itself which would occur in the 3rd year. At the time that this decision was made to lift the ban on gain-of-function research, Anthony Fauci had completed his 33rd year as the 5th director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, at the National Institutes of Health, a position he had held since November of 1984. Yep, more 3s and 33s. Fauci was a very prominent figure during the COVID scamdemic. Naysayers will laugh and blithely ignore it, claiming, big deal, and what could possibly link an eclipse with gain-of-function research or COVID? Well, on 12 December 2019, a date which sums to 333, just 19 days before the end of 2019, the Wuhan Municipal Health Commission reported 27 cases of viral pneumonia that eventually came to be known as COVID-19. This was the beginning of the end for Trump's first term. But how and why? Let's go back in time to 21 August 2017. I explain in my books that the Great Eclipse sought to reenact parts of the tragedy of the crucifixion of Christ, with the United States, created in the image of Christ, now suffering in that role. The role of being the one crucified, but not the role of Christ, which I've already stated was being played by Obama/Trump. If you remember, there was darkness across the land during Christ's crucifixion for 3 hours. During the eclipse of 2017, this was mimicked as nearly 3 minutes of totality. During that time, the light of the sun, the corona or crown, was stolen by the moon, just like the light of the sun, S-O-N, was stolen by death or Satan or whatever when Christ died, since it couldn't have been scientifically caused by the moon during Passover, as Passover takes place at a full and not a new moon. The moon and Satan/Lucifer are essentially synonymous. In the case of the eclipse, the moon steals the crown and becomes the king during the middle of the day, a time when the sun typically rules. In the third minute during this eclipse, as on the third day, the light was resurrected. That event, the Great Eclipse, took place in the first year of Trump's presidency. Trump stood outside like a moron without glasses and looked up at the sun's crown being usurped, and never gave a thought, first, second, or otherwise, that what he was witnessing was his own future. Fast forward to the last year of Trump's first presidency. What magically materialized? A mysterious coronavirus appeared, and the crown of a leader was once again stolen. Instead of the crown being taken from an orange sun, now it was being taken from an orange man. These are mirror moments in time, people. All of this was carefully planned for the symbolism. This particular coronavirus first appeared on the 19th anniversary of the very day that George Bush was selected president by the Supreme Court, 12 December 2000. Was this just another coincidence? Oh, hell no. Precisely 39 weeks later, to the day, the events of 9/11 took place in 2001. The number 39 is the number of weeks of the typical gestation period of a human fetus, a number of weeks that is 13 short of a full 52-week year. Likewise, 39 is itself a trinity of 13s, another important occult number. But just what unholy beast was birthed that day on 9/11? It probably can't be good, since there were precisely 6,666 days between 9/11 and 12/12/2019, the 19th anniversary of Bush's selection and the announcement of coronavirus in Wuhan. This would ultimately lead to the selection of Joe Biden for president by another method of appointment, cheating. Again, mirror moments in time. The first, an intellectually indigent Republican, and the second, a doddering Democrat. 6,666 days between 9/11 and the Wuhan announcement on 12/12/2019. Seems like shades of Elizabeth Christ Trump dying on 6/6/66, wouldn't you say? Could both events, in the year 2000 and in 2019, on the calendar date of 12/12, have been referring to Donald Trump? That would mean that whatever force pulled 9/11 knew that Donald Trump was going to be president 19 years later. How? Like the American Revolution and the creation of the United States, could the layout of the last president have been known and planned decades, perhaps centuries in the past? Nah, I'm sure it's just another coincidence. Joe Biden was awarded his presidency at approximately 3:33 a.m. Eastern on the morning of 7 January 2021. This was 3 weeks and 3 days after the presidential electors met to cast their votes for Biden on 14 December 2020. Hamas just happened to allegedly attack Israel precisely 33 months later, presenting them with their own 9/11. Gosh, those dreaded threes just keep showing up. Do you seriously think that this just happens? I dare you to keep calling this just a coincidence. Or have I just discovered the secrets behind the operation of the world? If Christ was resurrected on the third day, then it stands to reason that Trump would be resurrected on the third presidency in 2024. With the first presidency being Trump, the second presidency being Biden, and the third presidency being Trump. Let's review so that this sinks in, shall we? In the 33rd week of the year, and 30 weeks and 3 days after Donald Trump was inaugurated, the Great Eclipse occurs. Roughly 33% of the year later, 32.88 to be precise, and 333 days after Trump took office, the ban on funding gain-of-function research was lifted, which itself takes place 33 years after Anthony Fauci became director of NIAID. At the same time, a relatively unknown pharmaceutical company just happened to patent what would become the COVID-19 spike protein sequence in the third month of 2017, years before it became novel. On 12 December 2019, a date that sums to 333, COVID-19 appears. This was 19 years to the day after George Bush was appointed president in a contested election, which itself was 39 weeks to the day prior to 9/11, which itself was 6,666 days prior to the Wuhan flu. That manufactured scamdemic would lead to the mirror moment of Joe Biden being selected president in yet another contested election to offset the one where George Bush was selected president. Mirror moments in time. Biden was awarded the presidency at 3:33 in the morning, 3 weeks and 3 days after the electors cast their votes. Precisely 33 months later, Israel is attacked by Hamas in another manufactured event. Finally, Trump would be resurrected on the third presidency in 2024. Now, are you seriously going to try to tell me that all those 3s and 33s and 333s and all the other special numbers are only there because of some totally normal organic element akin to magical evolution? Yeah. One final point to make with the coronavirus lay with the bioweapon vaccine provided to allegedly combat it, or as I believe, to actually create it, since COVID levels spike dramatically in virtually every location immediately following rollout of the vaccine in those areas. You see, instead of injecting subjects with a dead or otherwise attenuated version of the alleged virus, thus hopefully prodding the immune system to build the appropriate antibodies to fight it, this time the mad scientists would essentially create a virus of their own to sneak its way into your cells, at which point artificially programmed mRNA, mod RNA, would hijack the cells and force them to produce a known toxin, the spike or horned proteins that form the outer shell around coronaviruses. Quite simply, you weren't being protected against a virus, you were being inundated with the box the virus comes in. Think back to those days. There was a massive sales push and fear push to get you to want the vaccine. Indeed, they were even pushing the granddaddy of all guilt trips by making you feel like it was your duty to get vaccinated to save your neighbor, thereby imbuing you with some sort of messiah complex. Why? If the vaccine truly worked, why should it matter if others weren't vaccinated? They die, you live. Why should you care? So why the grandiose sales push? Why not just mandate that everyone take the jab no matter what? Why was it important that you willingly choose to do this yourself? Because in matters affecting your soul, you have to willingly choose to turn it over, just like Esau willingly chose to sell his birthright to his swindler brother, Jacob. Do you understand? They have no power over you unless you give them power. They use fear to win the day. And so, from a purely symbolic perspective, the corona, the sacred crown of light that was stolen from the sun by the moon during the great eclipse, was now to be incessantly manufactured inside of you. Your cells would be reprogrammed by the ill-named vaccine to produce the spike protein, the outer shell that mimics the solar corona, the devil-horned protein. And you would be coerced to now honor and worship the moon, ruler of the darkness. The moon is just another synonym for the God of the Old Testament, or Satan, or Lucifer, or the devil. The corona on the outside in the sky that you were so in awe of was now replaced with a corona on the inside of you. That devil horn spike protein was quite literally the mark of the beast, as described in the pages of Revelation. Remember how you were required to have said sacred protein inside your body if you ever intended to buy or sell again, referencing work or shopping, predictions foretold in Revelation. All that mattered was that you carried the mark of the beast, a mark that recalled a time when the light of the sun, representing the primordial domain of our immortal souls, was usurped by the moon, and the crown of God the Father/Christ was stolen. This is about lauding a victory by Satan, my fellow souls. Note carefully, although businesses required you to take the shot to keep your job, it was ultimately a willing act on your part to consent to it. You willingly turned your soul over to darkness. Many of you felt how wrong this was deep inside, how you were being forced into it. But you also felt you didn't have any choice if you wanted to feed your family. Just as bad, those who were vaccinated spread their spike proteins to others who hadn't taken the jab via a process called viral shedding. This nightmare that we are living is not detached from the spiritual in any way. The primary focus of this existence is the disposition of our souls. The physical is solely designed to corrupt and sully our once pure and beautiful souls, to get us to willingly sell them to the devil, or, barring that, to destroy them by any means necessary, such as erasure in nuclear fire. The con of the COVID scamdemic and getting you to willingly embrace taking the jab is one of the most vile and egregious acts of turning to Satan that has ever been seen. It rivals what I call the great deception of Satan/Lucifer playing the God of the Old Testament. But don't forget that this bioweapon vax was openly pushed by Donald Trump. Never forget that. It was created under his watch, and to this day, to my knowledge, he has never disavowed the vax or his role in it. Indeed, he has bragged about it. Again, as I stated, he's playing an antichrist. Can anything be done to rectify this now that you know? I like to think so, especially since you weren't fully aware. Unfortunately, the chosen are very good at making sure the truth is present all around us, such as with patents, etc. The truth was out there, so I don't really know the rules of the spiritual game. Fauci was a consummate used car salesman who peddled his wares and promised us the moon, and he delivered the moon. It just wasn't what you thought it would be. And two of the most important vocations on this planet, who traditionally have been seen to help mankind, grossly let us down. I'm not just talking about doctors, I'm especially talking about preachers. They are the most guilty of all. They could and should have figured out just what I figured out. Instead of pushing faith in their God, they pushed faith in man. Hell, even the Pope pushed it, and is still doing so. That should tell you everything. Naturally, you will still likely doubt that Trump's fate in his first term was in any way related to the Great Eclipse. If true, then why did his campaign release an advertisement mimicking the eclipse by having a corona around Trump's head after he won the 2024 selection? Remember, from orange sun to orange man. Did Trump actually get the true meaning of the eclipse symbolism? Highly, highly doubtful. However, someone in his campaign definitely did, likely a member of the chosen. The symbolism of this ad likely reveals that the mirror has flipped and the necessary echo is now playing to achieve balance. The very same creatures who put Biden into office by cheating now arrange things so that Trump would win, including having a manufactured assassination attempt. But why? Because that's right where they want him. The elite want him to be president. Surely this is the end of all the strangeness regarding Trump, you think? Nope. No, my fellow souls, we are living the greatest science fiction show ever created, and we have barely scratched the surface. If you thought these provable factoids were unbelievable, this is nothing compared to where I intend to take you in the upcoming episodes. Can you hang on until the end? Most sadly will probably not. I hope this video has introduced you to even more interesting alternative concepts. Naturally, the key takeaway to remember is that the elite always speak to us via symbolism. They speak truth via actions that they themselves manufacture, while simultaneously spewing a cacophony of lies to our face. This is particularly evident when events like COVID or the Las Vegas shooting or 9/11 or the American Revolution make no logical sense. It will never make sense until you step back and try to understand the symbolism you are being given. Sadly, in order to make a proper analysis, you must be versed in the Bible and history, and you must begin to see things from a different perspective. Take a few more steps up the mountain. Your perspective is changing. If you found this interesting, please check out my books. In particular, The Great Deception, What If We Are All Satanists, describes the link with the Las Vegas shooting, the groundbreaking for Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, the 2024 Super Bowl, and the future participants of that game, all of which were known and took place in 2017. My website is www.mastersofthemirror.com. Thanks.